For 6 months, Tyler Anderson counted every dollar twice, once when he earned it, once before he spent it. The wounded veteran had exactly $3,000 to his name when he bought the condemned farmhouse on Hillside Lane, a structure most people wouldn't stable animals in. His friends called him crazy. The bank called it unsellable. But when his rescue dog Duke started scratching at the floor in the middle of the night, Tyler discovered something that would prove the greatest risks sometimes carry the greatest rewards. What Tyler didn't know was that his desperate gamble had connected him to a fortune and a family that had been waiting 70 years to be found. This is the story of how one veteran's last chance became his greatest blessing. The March wind cut through Tyler Anderson's jacket like it had a personal grudge. He stood in the gravel driveway of what the realtor generously called a fixer-upper, staring at the farmhouse that represented every dollar he had left in the world. $3,000. That's what remained of his savings after 2 surgeries on his leg, the medical bills that kept coming, and the rent he couldn't pay anymore. $3,000 for a house that leaned slightly to the left, its gray paint peeling like sunburned skin, windows cracked or missing entirely, and a front porch that sagged under the weight of 40 years of neglect. You're sure about this? The realtor, a woman named Linda Peterson, shifted her weight nervously. She'd shown him 4 other properties, all beyond his budget. This was the only thing $3,000 could buy in Cedar Ridge, and even then, it was more liability than asset. Tyler ran his hand along the porch railing. Solid oak, despite everything. I'm sure. He wasn't sure, not really, but he was out of options. His landlord had given him until the end of the month, and that was 8 days away. The VA housing assistants had a 6-month waiting list. His buddy's couch had lasted 3 weeks before Tyler's nightmares became too much for his friend's family to handle. This or nothing. Those were his choices. Duke, his German Shepherd rescue, sat patiently beside him, his dark eyes watching Tyler's face. The dog had been with him 4 months now, pulled from a shelter the same week Tyler got his eviction notice. Some cosmic joke, probably. 2 broken things finding each other right when breaking couldn't get any worse. The inspector said the foundation is mostly sound, Linda offered, flipping through her paperwork. And the roof held through last winter, so that's something. It needs everything, but structurally, you could make it livable. Could. That word doing heavy lifting. Tyler signed the papers in Linda's car, his hand cramping around the pen. Every signature felt like jumping off a cliff. The cashier's check represented 6 months of overtime at the hardware store. Every shift he could pick up despite his legs screaming by hour 5. Months of eating ramen, of walking instead of driving, of saying no to anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. All of it gone, transformed into a house that might collapse before he could fix it. The previous owner died 10 years ago, Linda said as she handed him the keys. Estate finally settled last month. They just wanted it off their books. The keys were cold in his palm, heavier than he expected. Tyler limped up the porch steps, Duke padding beside him. The front door stuck, swollen from moisture, and he had to shoulder it open. The sound echoed through empty rooms, disturbing dust that hung in the air like fog. Inside was worse than outside. Water stains bloomed across the ceiling in abstract patterns. The floorboards groaned under his weight, some spongy with rot. The kitchen counter had separated from the wall. When he tried the faucet, nothing came out but a rattling cough. He'd need permits, materials, tools he didn't own, skills he'd have to learn from YouTube videos, and money he absolutely did not have. Tyler sank down against the wall in what used to be the living room, his leg throbbing. Duke lay down beside him, resting his head on Tyler's thigh. The dog's warmth was the only comfortable thing in the entire structure. "What did we do?" Tyler whispered. Duke's tail thumped once against the floor. The sun was setting through the broken windows, casting long shadows across the damaged floors. Tyler had a sleeping bag in his truck, some canned food, and a camping stove. His first night as a homeowner, and he'd be sleeping on the floor of a house that might not be standing in 5 years, but it was his floor, his house. No landlord could evict him. No one could take this away as long as he could pay the property taxes, which, for a condemned property in rural Montana, were mercifully low. Tyler pulled out his phone, 42% battery, and he'd need to find somewhere to charge it tomorrow. He opened his banking app one last time. Balance, $127.43. He'd kept just enough for gas, some food, and the reconnection fee for electricity. Then he'd be at zero. Back to living paycheck to paycheck, except now he owned a collapsing farmhouse and had no backup plan. Duke shifted, pressing closer. The dog had nightmares too, thrashed and whimpered in his sleep, woke up startled at sudden sounds. The shelter said he'd been abandoned, found wandering I-90 with collar marks but no tags. Whatever his story was, it hadn't been kind. "We'll figure it out," Tyler said, mostly to himself. The dog's breathing slowed, deepened, trusting. After everything, still trusting. Tyler closed his eyes and tried to believe his own words. Tomorrow he'd start. He'd patch the worst holes, get the utilities running, make one room livable, then another, then another. He'd work every shift the hardware store would give him, save every penny, slowly turn this disaster into something resembling a home. It was possible, barely, if nothing went wrong, if his leg held up, if the house didn't reveal some catastrophic flaw that made it truly uninhabitable. If. But tonight, in the dying light of his first day as a homeowner, Tyler Anderson had a roof over his head. It leaked, it sagged. It probably had mice, but it was his. And somehow that was enough. Tyler woke to rain drumming on the roof and something wet dripping onto his face. He rolled over on the sleeping bag, every muscle stiff from the cold floor. Gray dawn light filtered through the broken windows. Duke was already up, shaking himself off, his fur damp. There were puddles forming in 3 different corners of the living room. The roof leak. Of course, Tyler dragged himself upright, his bad leg cramping immediately. He limped through the house, assessing the damage. Water was coming in through the ceiling in the back bedroom. The bathroom had no running water at all, and when he tried the light switch, nothing happened. Right. The electricity wasn't scheduled to be turned on until tomorrow, if he could pay the reconnection fee. He checked his phone. 20% battery. 2 missed calls from the hardware store. His shift started in an hour. Tyler fed Duke half a can of dog food, ate a protein bar himself, and drove to work with his gas tank hovering near empty. His manager, Bill Henderson, took one look at him and frowned. "You sleep in your truck?" "New place, still getting settled." Bill didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. Tyler spent 8 hours lifting boxes, helping customers, trying not to limp visibly. Every step sent pain shooting up his leg. He'd overdone it yesterday, carrying his stuff into the house. The physical therapist had warned him about this. His paycheck would direct deposit on Friday, 4 days away. In that time, he needed to make $127 last for gas, food, and the electrical hookup. When he got back to the farmhouse that evening, the rain had stopped, but the damage was done. The back bedroom had a puddle 3 feet wide. The ceiling drywall was sagging, waterlogged, and threatening to collapse entirely. Tyler grabbed a bucket from his truck bed and positioned it under the worst leak. Then he pulled up roofing repair videos on his phone while it was still light enough to see. Temporary patch, tarp, and some heavy boards. He could do that, maybe. He didn't have a tarp. Tyler sat on the porch steps as the sun set, Duke beside him. His stomach growled. He'd skipped lunch to save money. There was still half a can of ravioli in his truck, but he should probably save it. His phone buzzed. Text from his sister in Seattle. "How's the new place? Send pics." He looked at the sagging farmhouse, the broken windows, the porch that leaned like a drunk. Took a photo anyway, angled to hide the worst of it. Getting there, he typed back. Lots of potential. The lie tasted bitter. That night, he moved his sleeping bag to the front room, away from the leaks. Duke circled 3 times before settling beside him. Tyler could hear mice in the walls, scurrying and scratching. Add that to the list of problems. He pulled out his notebook, the one where he'd been tracking expenses and repairs. The list had grown to 2 pages. Each item had an estimated cost beside it. The total made his chest tight. Roof repair, $3,000 to $5,000. Electrical work, $2,000. Plumbing, $1,500. Windows, $800. Floor repair, $1,000. Insulation, $1,200, and on and on. Even doing the work himself, materials alone would cost more than he'd make in 6 months. The math didn't work. It had never worked. He'd known that when he signed the papers, but knowing and facing it were different things. Tyler clicked his phone off to save battery. In the darkness, doubt crept in like the cold. What had he been thinking? That he could somehow bootstrap his way into having a real home? That wanting it badly enough would make it possible? That $3,000 and determination could overcome 40 years of decay? The house creaked around him, settling, or collapsing. Hard to tell which. Duke shifted, pressing his warm weight against Tyler's side. The dog's breathing was steady, calm, trusting. Tyler thought about the shelter where he'd found Duke, the kennels full of unwanted dogs, each one hoping that today someone would choose them. Duke had been in the back corner, head down, not even looking up when people passed. The volunteer said he'd been there 3 months. Another week, and they'd have to make space. Tyler had looked at that dog and seen himself, beaten down, running out of time, worth saving anyway. "I'm sorry, buddy," Tyler whispered into the dark. "I thought I could give you better than this." Duke's tail thumped against the floor. Maybe that was enough. Maybe having someone who believed in you, even when everything was falling apart, was its own kind of wealth. Tyler didn't believe that. Not really, but he needed to, so he closed his eyes and tried. Tomorrow he'd patch the roof, find a tarp somewhere, somehow, keep the water out. That was step 1. Then Friday's paycheck would come. He'd pay the electric bill, buy some food, put gas in the truck, keep moving forward. One day, then the next, then the next. He'd done harder things, survived worse situations. This was just another mission, another objective. Secure shelter, maintain equipment, survive until reinforcements arrive. Except reinforcements weren't coming. There was no cavalry, just him, a broken dog, and a house that was falling apart faster than he could fix it. The rain started again around midnight. Soft at first, then building to a steady drumming. Tyler heard it hit the bucket in the back room. Listened for new leaks. There, the kitchen, the steady drip of water on linoleum. He didn't get up to check. Tomorrow. He'd deal with it tomorrow. For now, in the darkness of his ruined house, Tyler Anderson let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done, the enormity of the mistake, the impossibility of the task, the crushing reality that sometimes hope isn't enough. But he'd made his choice, spent his last dollar on this wreck. There was no going back, only forward, through the leaks and the cold and the fear, one impossible day at a time. Margaret Sullivan stood at the window of her study, watching rain streak down the glass. Outside, the manicured grounds of the Ashford estate stretched toward the tree line. 60 acres of carefully maintained property that had been in her family for 4 generations. She was 73 years old, and she'd spent the last 45 of them searching. "Ma'am," her assistant, Robert Harrison, appeared in the doorway with her afternoon tea. The investigator called again. Margaret turned from the window, and another dead end. The property records show the sale went through, But the new owner isn't who we're looking for. She'd heard this before, dozens of times. Every lead that went nowhere, every hope that fizzled out. Show me anyway. Robert set down the tea and pulled out his tablet, bringing up the report. Cedar Ridge, Montana, the farmhouse on Hillside Lane, finally sold after a decade in probate. New owner is Tyler Anderson, 28, Army veteran. Medically discharged 18 months ago. Margaret's breath caught. Army? Yes, ma'am. Served in Afghanistan, injured in an IED attack. Works at a hardware store now. Robert hesitated. Ma'am, with respect, we've checked hundreds of properties. This one doesn't fit the criteria. But Margaret was already reaching for the tablet, studying the grainy photograph of the rundown farmhouse. It looked nothing like she remembered. The paint was gone, the porch sagging, windows broken. But the bones were right. The angle of the roof, the placement of the chimney. What was the previous owner's name? Robert checked his notes. Estate of James Morrison. Died 2015, but the property had been abandoned since the early 1980s. Morrison. The name sent ice through Margaret's veins. Before that, she said quietly, who owned it before Morrison? Let me check the chain of title. Robert's fingers moved across the tablet. Morrison purchased it in 1978 from... He stopped, looked up at her. From the Ashford Family Trust. The room tilted. Margaret gripped the back of her chair. Ma'am, are you all right? She wasn't. After 45 years, she'd finally found it. Margaret was born in that farmhouse in 1951. Her father, Thomas Ashford, had bought it as a country retreat, a place away from the main estate where he could work in peace. She'd spent her childhood summers there, running through fields that didn't belong to anyone, climbing trees no gardener had pruned. Her brother Daniel had loved it even more. 8 years older, he'd treated the farmhouse like his personal kingdom. When the war in Vietnam started, he'd enlisted despite their father's fury. Someone has to go, Daniel had said. Might as well be someone who's already been given everything. He'd come home on leave in the spring of 1970, gaunt and different. Margaret was 19 then, and she'd watched her brother spend 2 weeks at the farmhouse, mostly alone, writing letters, sorting through boxes, taking long walks at dawn. I'm not coming back this time, he'd told her on his last night. They were sitting on the porch, watching fireflies. Don't say that. Maggie, listen, he'd taken her hand. If something happens to me, there's something hidden in the farmhouse. Under the floor in the bedroom, the one on the east side. I put it there for safekeeping. Promise me you'll get it if I don't come back. She'd promised, not believing she'd ever need to. 3 months later, Daniel Sullivan Ashford was killed in action near Da Nang. Their father, destroyed by grief, sold the farmhouse within the year. He couldn't bear to look at it, he said. Couldn't stand the memories. Margaret had tried to tell him about Daniel's hiding place, but her father was beyond listening. The sale went through. The new owner, James Morrison, moved in. Margaret had gone to the farmhouse once, 2 months after the sale, knocked on the door. A middle-aged man answered, suspicious and cold. I'm Margaret Ashford. My brother used to... I know who you are. Your family doesn't own this anymore. Please, there's something my brother left here. Under the floorboards in the east bedroom. It's personal, not valuable. I just need to... Get off my property. He'd slammed the door in her face. She'd tried going through lawyers, offering money, anything. Morrison refused all contact. A decade later, she'd heard he'd abandoned the place, moved to Florida. By then, the farmhouse was falling apart, too damaged to safely enter without permission she couldn't get. The property sat in legal limbo for years. Morrison died owing back taxes, and the estate took forever to settle. Margaret had instructed her investigator to watch for when it finally sold, hoping the new owner might be reasonable. And now, finally, it had sold, to a veteran. Robert, Margaret said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. I need you to find everything you can about Tyler Anderson, everything, and prepare the car. We're going to Cedar Ridge. Ma'am, it's a 3-hour drive, and it's already late afternoon. Tomorrow morning then, first thing. She returned to the window, looking out at the rain. 45 years since Daniel died. 45 years of wondering what he'd hidden, what last words or belongings he'd wanted preserved. Her brother had given everything for his country, came home broken, went back anyway, died in a war nobody wanted. And for 45 years, whatever piece of him he'd tried to save had been trapped under the floorboards of an abandoned house. But now someone new owned it, a veteran, someone who might understand what it meant to serve, to sacrifice, someone who might, just maybe, let her finally keep her promise. Margaret pressed her hand against the cold glass. "I'm coming, Danny," she whispered. "I'm finally coming to get it." In Cedar Ridge, 3 hours away, Tyler Anderson slept on the floor of that same farmhouse, not knowing that the broken-down property he'd bought for $3,000 held a secret that would change his life forever. Friday's paycheck hit Tyler's account at 6 a.m., $487.32 after taxes. He paid the electric company $125 for reconnection, bought $40 in groceries, mostly rice, beans, and whatever was on clearance, put $50 in gas. That left $272 for everything else. The hardware store was hiring for weekend shifts. Tyler took them. Saturday and Sunday, 8 hours each. His legs screamed by noon both days, but he pushed through. Another $180 gross, maybe $140 after taxes. He needed a tarp. The rain had started again Thursday night and hadn't stopped. The bucket in the back bedroom was overflowing twice a day. The ceiling drywall had finally collapsed Friday evening, crashing down in soggy chunks that he'd hauled out to the yard in contractor bags. Tuesday morning, Tyler found a tarp at a yard sale. $15 for a weathered blue one with one corner torn. He spent 3 hours on the roof, securing it with boards scrounged from the collapsed barn out back. His hands bled from splinters by the time he finished. The tarp held, mostly. Small victories. Duke had discovered mice in the kitchen and spent hours watching the walls, occasionally pouncing at shadows. Tyler bought 2 traps at the dollar store, set them with peanut butter, caught 3 mice in 2 days. He reset the traps and tried not to think about how many more were in the walls. The electricity worked now, which meant lights and the ability to charge his phone. But the electrical panel was ancient, and Tyler was terrified to plug in too many things at once. He'd read online about house fires from overloaded circuits in old farmhouses, used his camping stove instead of risking the oven. Wednesday evening, walking through the house, Tyler noticed Duke acting strange. The dog kept going to the east bedroom, the one with the collapsed ceiling, and scratching at the floor. "What's up, buddy?" Duke whined, pawed at a particular floorboard. It was discolored, slightly different from the others. Tyler knelt down, running his hand along the seam. The board was loose. He went to his truck for a pry bar, came back, carefully worked the board up. Underneath was older flooring, darker wood, and beneath that nothing visible but shadows. Duke's tail wagged furiously. "If you found more mice, I swear—" Tyler pried up the second board. Duke immediately stuck his nose into the gap, sniffing frantically. Tyler pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, shined it into the space between the floors. Metal, something metal, wrapped in what looked like canvas. His heart rate kicked up. Probably nothing. Probably just old trash, debris from decades ago. But Duke was pawing at the floor, whining, and Tyler's hands were already reaching down into the gap. The canvas was rotted, falling apart at his touch. But the metal inside was solid, heavy. He pulled it out carefully, sat back on his heels. It was a military-style ammunition box, old green paint flaking. The latch was rusted but intact. Tyler's breath caught. He'd seen boxes like this in Afghanistan. Soldiers used them for everything: important documents, personal items, stuff you wanted to keep safe and dry. Someone had hidden this, deliberately, under the floor, wrapped and protected. He worked the latch carefully. It fought him, rust grinding against rust, but finally gave way with a crack. Inside, papers. Stacks of them, yellowed with age but protected by the metal box. Letters, photographs, and on top, a journal with a name embossed on the leather cover: Daniel S. Ashford. Tyler lifted the journal carefully. The leather was cracked but intact. He opened it to the first page. Property of Captain Daniel Ashford, United States Army. If found, please return to the Ashford family, Cedar Ridge, Montana. Below that, a date, March 1970, Vietnam era. Tyler's breath caught. He'd bought a farmhouse from a dead man's estate, and under the floor was another dead man's hidden belongings, a soldier's belongings, from a family that might not even know they existed. Duke pushed his nose against Tyler's arm, tail still wagging. "Good boy," Tyler whispered. "You found something important, didn't you?" He carefully lifted out the contents. Dozens of letters tied with string. Photographs, a young man in uniform, the same man with a girl who looked like his sister. Family photos on what looked like this very porch before it sagged. A metal, bronze star, and the journal, filled with handwriting. Tyler felt like he was intruding on something sacred. These weren't his. This was someone's life, their memories, their private thoughts, hidden here for safekeeping and lost when the original owner never came back. He thought about his own deployment, the letters he'd written and never sent, the journal he'd kept those first months before the IED changed everything. If he'd died over there, would anyone have found these things? Would they have mattered to anyone? Of course they would have. Soldiers left pieces of themselves behind deliberately. Messages for loved ones, final thoughts, the words they couldn't say out loud. Someone should have these, the family, if they were still alive. Tyler checked his phone. 7:47 p.m. Too late to start making calls, but tomorrow he'd figure out who the Ashfords were, return what belonged to them. He carefully packed everything back into the ammunition box, closed the lid gently, set it on the makeshift table he'd built from sawhorses and plywood. Duke had given him this, led him to it. Maybe that meant something. Maybe dogs understood about unfinished business, about things that needed to be made right. Tyler's stomach growled. He'd skipped dinner to save money, planned to make rice when it got dark, but now, looking at the box, he felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Not quite hope, but something adjacent. Purpose, maybe. The sense that he could do something good, something that mattered, even while his own life was barely holding together. He'd spent his last dollars buying this broken house, had suffered for it, struggled, questioned everything. But maybe, just maybe, there was a reason. Maybe he was supposed to be here, supposed to find this. Tyler didn't believe in fate, didn't believe in cosmic plans, but he believed in duty, in finishing the mission, in making sure brothers in arms weren't forgotten. Tomorrow he'd find the Ashford family, return what was theirs, complete the mission Daniel Ashford had started 55 years ago. It wouldn't fix the roof or pay the bills, wouldn't solve any of his problems, but it would matter. And right now, that was enough. The knock came at 9 a.m. Saturday morning. Tyler was in the kitchen, trying to coax the old stove into heating water for instant coffee, when Duke's barking echoed through the house. The dog ran to the front door, tail wagging instead of aggressive. Friendly knock, then. Tyler wasn't expecting anyone. Linda the realtor had checked in once by text but hadn't visited. Bill from work knew where he lived but wouldn't just drop by. He opened the door to find an elderly woman standing on his sagging porch, flanked by a younger man in a suit. She was slight, white-haired, but her posture was straight and her eyes sharp. Behind them sat a black Mercedes, so out of place in his weed-filled driveway it almost looked photoshopped. "Tyler Anderson?" Her voice was steady, refined. "Yes, ma'am. Can I help you?" "My name is Margaret Sullivan. I used to be Margaret Ashford." She paused, watching his face. "I believe you found something that belonged to my family." Tyler's stomach dropped. How did you... May we come in?" He stepped back, suddenly aware of how the house must look. The camping stove on the counter, his sleeping bag visible through the doorway, the general state of barely controlled decay. Margaret walked in without hesitation, her eyes moving across the space with recognition. "I haven't been inside this house in over 50 years, she said quietly. "It's changed." "It's falling apart is what it is," Tyler said. Then, remembering his manners, "Sorry, yes, please come in. There's not really anywhere to sit." The man in the suit, her assistant, Tyler realized, pulled 2 folding chairs from his car. Margaret sat in one carefully, never taking her eyes off Tyler. "You found my brother's belongings." It wasn't a question. "Yesterday," Tyler confirmed. "My dog, he kept scratching at the floor. There was an ammunition box under the floorboards. I haven't read any of it, just saw the name. I was going to try to find you today, actually, return it." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She didn't blink them away. "Daniel hid it there in 1970, right before his last deployment. He told me about it the night before he left. Made me promise to retrieve it if anything happened to him." "Vietnam?" "Yes, he was killed 3 months later." She drew a breath. "My father sold the property in his grief. The new owner refused to let me inside, wouldn't let me retrieve what Daniel had left, and then the house sat abandoned for decades." Tyler felt the weight of it. 45 years. She'd been trying to get this back for 45 years. "I'll get it for you." He retrieved the ammunition box from the back bedroom, carried it carefully. Duke followed, tail wagging, sensing something important was happening. Tyler set the box on the makeshift table in front of Margaret. Her hands shook as she reached for it. "I never knew what he'd hidden. He just said it was important, that I'd understand when I found it." She opened the latch Tyler had broken free, lifted the lid. The sight of the journal, the letters, the photographs, she made a sound that wasn't quite a sob. The assistant, Robert, put a hand on her shoulder. Margaret lifted the journal with reverence, opened it to the first page. Her fingers traced the handwriting. Then she started to cry in earnest, quiet tears streaming down her face. Tyler looked away, giving her privacy. Duke pushed his head under Tyler's hand. After a long moment, Margaret spoke. "Do you know what it's like to make a promise to someone and then have it held hostage for decades?" "No, ma'am. It's a particular kind of torture." She set the journal down carefully. "I've tried everything. Offered money, sent lawyers, waited for the property to become available. Nothing worked." She looked at Tyler directly. "And then you bought it. For how much?" $3,000. "That's all you had, wasn't it?" Tyler hesitated. "How did you—" "Robert did research. You're a veteran, wounded in service, working at a hardware store, living in this condemned house because it was all you could afford." Tyler felt exposed. Heat crept up his neck. "It's a work in progress." Margaret stood, walked to the window, looked out at the overgrown yard. "My family built a fortune in timber and real estate. The Ashford estate is worth $40 million. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes." She turned back to him. "And yet for 45 years, I couldn't do the one thing that mattered. I couldn't keep my promise to my brother." "You can now," Tyler said. "Take all of it. It's yours." "Because of you." Margaret returned to her chair. "You spent everything you had on this broken house. And then your dog led you to my brother's hiding place. And you, without even knowing who I was, you planned to find me and return it. It's the right thing to do. Most people don't do the right thing when it costs them nothing. You were going to do it when it cost you everything." She glanced at Robert. Some silent communication Tyler didn't understand. How much do you owe on this property? Nothing. I bought it outright. And how much will it cost to make it livable? Tyler thought about his notebook, the endless list of repairs. More than I've got. I'm working on it, one project at a time. Margaret reached into her purse, pulled out a checkbook. Tyler's heart sank. Ma'am, I didn't do this for money. I know you didn't. That's exactly why I'm going to insist you accept this. She was already writing. My brother gave his life for this country. He came home broken, went back anyway, died in a jungle half a world away. The last thing he wanted was for his memories to be safe. You made that possible. I didn't do anything. I just found... You could have kept it, sold it. The medals alone are worth thousands. These letters, from a Vietnam casualty, collectors would pay. She tore the check free. You didn't. You saw a fallen soldier's belongings, and your first thought was to return them to his family. Tyler looked at the check, couldn't process what he was seeing. $50,000. Ma'am, I can't... You can, and you will. Her voice was firm. My family owes yours a debt. Soldiers like you, like my brother, gave everything. The least I can do is help one of them keep a roof over his head. Tyler's hands shook. $50,000. He could fix the roof, the plumbing, the electrical, buy tools, materials, make this house actually livable, have something left over for emergencies. This is too much. It's not nearly enough. Margaret stood, Robert moving to assist her. But it's a start. Use it well. Make this house something my brother would be proud of. She collected the ammunition box, cradling it like a child, paused at the door. Tyler Anderson, you gave me the greatest gift I could receive. You let me finally keep my promise. Thank you. After they left, Tyler stood in his empty house, holding a check for more money than he'd seen in his entire life. Duke sat beside him, tail wagging. Good boy, Tyler whispered. You good boy.
Tyler didn't cash the check for 3 days. It sat on his makeshift table, pinned under a can of beans, while he went to work and came home and stared at it. $50,000. Written in elegant script on thick paper with a watermark. It's not right, he told Duke on Monday evening. They were eating dinner. Tyler had splurged on actual chicken after not cashing the check. Duke got extra kibble. I didn't do anything to earn this. Duke crunched his food, unimpressed by the moral dilemma. Tyler's phone rang, number he didn't recognize. Mr. Anderson, this is Robert Harrison, Mrs. Sullivan's assistant. She asked me to check if you'd received the check. Yes, sir, I did. Wonderful. She wanted to make sure it had been deposited. The contractor she recommended needs an initial payment to... I haven't cashed it. Silence on the line. I'm sorry? I can't accept this. It's too much. I'll find a way to fix the house myself. Mr. Anderson? Could you please thank Mrs. Sullivan for her generosity, but I need to return it. I'll mail it back to the estate. More silence, then... Please hold. A minute later, a different voice. Margaret herself. Tyler, Robert tells me you're refusing my check. Ma'am, I appreciate the gesture, but I can't take $50,000 for doing the right thing. Why not? Because... He struggled for words. Because returning your brother's things wasn't a transaction. It was what anyone should do. But it's not what anyone would do. That's the entire point. Her voice was gentle but firm. Tyler, may I ask you a question? Yes, ma'am. Why did you join the military? The question caught him off guard. To serve. To do something that mattered. And when you were wounded, when you came home and life got hard, did you regret serving? No, ma'am. Never. Even though it cost you, your health, your career, your easy path forward? Tyler leaned against the wall. Even though? Because service matters more than safety. Duty matters more than comfort. Doing the right thing matters even when it costs you everything. Yes. Then you understand exactly why I need you to accept this check. Margaret's voice caught. My brother believed the same thing. He gave his life for those principles, and for 45 years, I couldn't honor that. I couldn't finish his last mission. You finished it for him. Tyler's throat tightened. I'm not paying you for finding a box, Tyler. I'm honoring my brother's legacy by helping a soldier who embodies everything he believed in. Please don't make his sacrifice meaningless by refusing. Duke whined, pushing his head against Tyler's leg. I still don't feel right about it, Tyler said quietly. I know. That's how I know you're the right person to receive it. She paused. I have a proposal. Come to the estate tomorrow. Let's talk about this properly. If you still want to refuse after we've spoken, I'll respect your decision. Tyler looked at the check, at his house with its tarp roof and broken windows, at Duke, who deserved better than this. What time? The Ashford estate was 45 minutes north, through winding roads that climbed into genuine Montana mountains. Tyler's truck rattled the whole way. Duke sat in the passenger seat watching out the window. The gates were wrought iron, the driveway lined with mature oaks. The house, mansion really, was stone and timber, built to last centuries. Gardens stretched in every direction, maintained but not ostentatious. Robert met him at the door, led him through hallways lined with family photographs. Tyler saw Daniel Ashford at various ages, high school graduation, college, military portraits, and Margaret at 20, 30, 40, always with that same straight posture and sharp eyes. She was waiting in the study, the ammunition box open on a table beside her, letters spread out, the journal open. She'd been reading. He was so young, she said without preamble. 26 when he died. I read these letters, and he sounds like a child trying to be brave. Tyler didn't know what to say to that. Margaret gestured to a chair. Tyler sat. Duke lay at his feet. Robert tells me you served in Afghanistan. Yes, ma'am. 2 tours. And you were wounded. IED, shrapnel in my leg, some other injuries. Tyler shifted, the leg aching like it always did when he thought about it. I was lucky. My buddies weren't. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Daniel wrote about luck, how arbitrary it was, how the man next to him would die and he'd walk away without a scratch. She touched the journal. He felt guilty about surviving. We all do. Did you ever want to talk to someone about it? Someone who understood? Tyler almost laughed. The VA has therapy. Waiting list is 6 months. What if it wasn't? He looked at her, not following. I've been reading Daniel's letters for 3 days, Margaret said. And I keep thinking about all the young men and women who come home broken, who need help but can't get it, who end up like you, working 2 jobs, sleeping on floors, just trying to survive. Ma'am, the Ashford Foundation supports various causes: environmental conservation, education, the arts, important work, but none of it personally meaningful to me. Until now. She stood, walked to the window. I want to start something new, a program specifically for veterans. Housing assistance, job placement, therapy access, real help, not just bureaucracy. Tyler's pulse quickened. That would be amazing. I want you to help me build it. He stared at her. What? You know what veterans need because you are one. You understand the systems that fail them because they failed you. I have resources and connections. Together, we could actually make a difference. I'm not qualified. You're perfectly qualified. You've lived it. Margaret returned to her chair. The check isn't charity, Tyler. It's an investment. In you, in this program, in honoring my brother's memory by helping the men and women who serve like he did. Tyler's hands were shaking. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Cash the check. Fix your house. Then come work with me to fix a system that's breaking our veterans. Duke's tail thumped against the floor. "Why me?" Tyler asked. "You could find someone with experience, credentials." "Because you found my brother's letters and wanted to return them. Because you spent your last dollar on a condemned house rather than give up. Because when I offered you money, your first instinct was to refuse it." Margaret's eyes were bright. "I don't need credentials, Tyler. I need someone who understands what service means, who won't forget where they came from, who will fight for people who can't fight for themselves." Tyler thought about the VA waiting lists, the veterans sleeping rough because they couldn't navigate the benefits system, the ones who'd given everything and gotten back nothing but red tape and broken promises. "I'll do it," he heard himself say, "but on one condition." "What's that?" "The program starts with housing. Nobody should have to sleep in their truck or on someone's couch because they served their country." Margaret smiled. "I couldn't agree more." She extended her hand. Tyler shook it, feeling the weight of the moment. "Thank you," he said.
"No," Margaret replied. "Thank you. You gave me my brother back. Let me return the favor by giving you a purpose worth fighting for." Tyler cashed the check on a Thursday. By Friday, he had contractors walking through the farmhouse, taking measurements, assessing damage. "Roof first," he told them, then windows, then electrical. The head contractor, a woman named Carol Jenkins, nodded. "Foundation's solid, surprising given everything else. But yeah, we can make this work. 6 weeks, maybe 8. While the house was being repaired, Margaret offered Tyler a guest cottage on the estate. Small, 1 bedroom, but clean and warm. Duke loved it. There was a fenced yard and no mice in the walls. Tyler started every morning with coffee on the cottage porch, Duke at his feet, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Then he'd drive to the main house to meet with Margaret and Robert, planning the Veteran Housing Initiative. They called it the Ashford Anderson Veterans Program. Tyler tried to argue against having his name on it, but Margaret was immovable. "You're the face of this," she said. "The veteran who needed help and figured out how to provide it for others. That matters." They started small, 3 houses in Cedar Ridge, purchased and renovated specifically for homeless veterans. Application process simple. Proof of service, proof of need, that's it. No credit check, no rental history required, no bureaucratic nightmares. The first veteran moved in on a Tuesday in June. Tyler met him at the door, a Marine named Kevin who'd been living in his car for 8 months. "This is really free?" Kevin asked, looking at the clean, furnished 2-bedroom house like it might vanish. "Rent-free for 1 year while you get on your feet," Tyler confirmed. "Then income-based rent after that, but capped at 20% of what you make." Kevin's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just pay it forward when you can." By fall, they'd housed 15 veterans. By winter, 23. Word spread through veteran networks, VA offices, homeless shelters. The program worked because it was simple. See a need, fill it, no strings attached. Margaret attended every house opening, shaking hands, listening to stories. She was 83 now, moving slower but as sharp as ever. "Daniel would have loved this," she told Tyler one evening. They were sitting in her study, reviewing applications for the next round of housing. "You think?" "I know, he was always bringing home strays, lost dogs, kids from rough neighborhoods, soldiers who had nowhere to go on leave. Drove our parents crazy," she smiled. "But he couldn't help it. He saw people struggling and had to do something." Tyler understood that. He'd been doing the same thing with his contractor salary, helping veterans with application fees, covering utilities when someone came up short, buying groceries for a family that needed it. Margaret noticed. Of course she noticed. "You're still living like you're broke," she observed. Tyler looked up from the stack of applications. "I'm not broke." "You drive a 15-year-old truck. You wear the same 3 shirts. You eat like a college student." Her tone was gentle. Tyler, you're making a good salary now. It's okay to spend some of it on yourself. I have everything I need. Do you? He thought about it. The cottage was more than comfortable. He had food, utilities, gas money. Duke had a yard and good vet care. Everything else felt unnecessary. I do, he said finally. Margaret studied him for a long moment. You know what I think? I think you're still that scared veteran who spent his last $3,000 on a condemned house, who's waiting for everything to fall apart again. The observation hit harder than Tyler expected. Maybe, he admitted. The thing is, Tyler, it's not going to fall apart. This program is real. Your position is real. You've earned this stability. She paused. But I understand the fear. Daniel had it too. Survivor's guilt, he called it. Couldn't enjoy anything because his friends were dead. How did he deal with it? He didn't. He went back to Vietnam. Margaret's voice was sad. But you're choosing differently. You're here, helping people, building something that matters. That's healing too. Tyler didn't feel healed. Most days he still woke up expecting catastrophe. Still checked his bank account twice before making any purchase. Still kept a go bag packed in case everything fell through. But he was helping people. That part was real. The farmhouse renovation finished in December. Tyler walked through it with Carol, checking the work. New roof, new windows, updated electrical and plumbing, fresh paint on every wall, hardwood floors refinished and sealed. It looked nothing like the wreck he'd bought. You planning to live here? Carol asked. Tyler touched the wall where Duke had scratched to find the ammunition box. Someone had lived here once, hidden precious things under these floors. Hoped someone would find them. No, Tyler said. I think this should be part of the program. Another house for a veteran who needs it. You sure it's yours? Exactly, it's mine to give. The Marine who'd been living in his car, Kevin, moved into the farmhouse in January with his wife and daughter. Tyler helped them carry boxes inside, Duke supervising from the porch. This is too much, Kevin said, looking at the house with wonder. Tyler thought about Margaret saying the same thing to him about the check, about how giving and receiving were both acts of courage. It's not too much, Tyler said. It's just right. Welcome home. 2 years after Tyler bought the farmhouse for $3,000, the Ashford Anderson Veterans Program operated 67 homes across Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. Margaret's 80th birthday party was held at the estate. Tyler stood near the window, Duke at his side, watching veterans and their families mill around the gardens. Families who had homes now, stability, hope. Quite a turnout, Robert said, joining him. She'd never admit it, but she loves this. She loves what it represents. Robert gestured to the crowd. Her brother's legacy living on. The promise she finally kept. Tyler watched a little girl chase Duke across the lawn, laughing. Her father was a vet from the Iraq War, homeless for 3 years before the program found him. Now he had an IT job and a house and his daughter back from foster care. That's what success looked like. Not numbers on a spreadsheet, but a child laughing with a dog on a summer afternoon. Margaret found him an hour later, pulled him aside. I have something for you. She led him to the study, Robert following. On the desk sat a familiar ammunition box. I've been reading Daniel's journal every few months, Margaret said, learning about who he was, what he believed in, and I found something I think you should see. She opened to a marked page, handed Tyler the journal. The entry was dated March 1970, 2 weeks before Daniel shipped out for the last time. Met a kid today at the train station, 17, trying to enlist, scared out of his mind. Asked me if it was worth it, serving, sacrificing all of it. I told him the truth. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. You'll lose people you love. You'll come home different. But if you do it right, if you help someone who can't help themselves, then yeah, it's worth it. Because here's what I figured out. Wealth isn't what you accumulate. It's what you multiply. One act of kindness becomes 2, becomes 10, becomes 100. You give everything you have to help one person, and if they pass it on, you've changed the world. That's the real mission. Not surviving, multiplying, making sure every sacrifice counts by turning it into more kindness than existed before. If I don't make it back, I hope someone finds this. I hope they understand that the greatest service isn't dying for your country, it's living for it. Building something that outlasts you. Being the reason someone else gets a chance. Tyler's hands shook. He read it again. He wrote that 55 years ago, Margaret said quietly, and you're living it. You took the help you were given and multiplied it 67 times over, more every month. It's not enough, Tyler said. There are thousands of veterans who still need housing, support, and you're reaching them, one at a time, just like Daniel said. She took the journal back, closed it gently. I'm 80 years old, Tyler. I won't live to see this program fully scaled, but you will. You'll take this from 67 homes to 600, to 6,000. That's a big dream. Daniel had big dreams too. Difference is, you're actually going to make them real. 6 months later, Margaret died peacefully in her sleep. Her will left the Ashford Foundation fully funded for perpetuity, with instructions that the veteran housing program be its primary focus. Tyler was named director. The reading of the will included one more surprise. She'd purchased the original farmhouse from Tyler for $1, then deeded it back to the program with specific instructions. Property to be maintained as a memorial to Captain Daniel Sullivan Ashford and all veterans who serve, Robert read. To be used in perpetuity as housing for homeless veterans, with preference given to those who have exhausted all other options. Tyler Anderson to oversee as long as he's able, with full authority to maintain the property as he sees fit. Tyler visited the farmhouse after the funeral. The current resident, a Navy veteran named Tom Riley, was working in the garden, planting vegetables. She was something special, wasn't she? Tom said. She was. You know what I think? Tom set down his trowel. I think she saw what you did, buying this wreck with your last dollar, finding that box, doing the right thing when it cost you everything. And she thought, that's who should carry this forward. Someone who knows what it means to have nothing and choose kindness anyway. Duke wandered over, let Tom pet him. The dog was older now, graying around the muzzle, but still enthusiastic about people. He's the real hero, Tyler said. Found the ammunition box. Started all of this. Nah, he just showed you where to dig. You did the rest. Tyler walked to the east bedroom, stood where Duke had scratched at the floor 2 years ago. That one moment had changed everything. Connected him to Margaret, to Daniel, to a legacy of service that was bigger than any one person. He pulled out his phone, opened the program's website. Applications from veterans across 3 states. Funding requests from partner organizations. Messages from families who'd been housed, thanking him, asking how they could help. Tyler thought about Daniel's words. Wealth isn't what you accumulate, it's what you multiply. He'd started with $3,000 and desperation, found a soldier's hidden memories, met a woman who'd waited 45 years to keep a promise, accepted help when every instinct said to refuse it, and from that impossible beginning, built something that would outlast them all. One act of kindness multiplied, again and again, until it became a movement. Tyler left the farmhouse as the sun was setting. Duke jumped into the truck, ready to go home, to the cottage that had become theirs, the estate that had become their base of operations, the work that had become their mission. Tomorrow there would be more applications to review, more houses to open, more veterans to help. The work was endless, the need was infinite, but so was the capacity for kindness, if you knew where to look for it. Tyler started the truck, Duke settling into the passenger seat with a contented sigh. In the rearview mirror, The farmhouse stood solid and warm, lights on in the windows, a home, a refuge, a memorial to a soldier who'd believed that sacrifice mattered most when it multiplied into more love than existed before. Daniel had hidden his legacy under the floorboards 55 years ago. Tyler had found it with $3,000 and a dog who wouldn't stop scratching. And Margaret had spent her final years watching it grow into something neither of them could have imagined. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the best legacies were the ones you couldn't predict, the ones that started with an impossible choice and ended with a chain of kindness that stretched farther than any one person could see. Tyler pulled out of the driveway, the farmhouse growing smaller in his mirrors, but its light stayed with him, a reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures aren't gold or jewels. Sometimes they're promises kept, sacrifices honored, and kindness multiplied until it changes the world. One veteran buying a broken house with his last dollar, one dog scratching at the right spot, one family finally able to keep a promise, and from those impossible beginnings, a legacy that continues to grow. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that their hardest moments might be leading them exactly where they're meant to be. Because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness become the biggest reasons to believe in hope.